Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to make quite a prompt start today because Antony's got a lot of content to get through. So hopefully people will join as I'm doing some housekeeping notes here. Welcome to this webinar. It is part of our Supporting Surrey programme, which we run in collaboration with Surrey Junior Lawyers Division. We've run 3 webinars this year, this being the final of those. You can see details of the other sessions we've run on the screen now. If you weren't able to join them, but are interested in the content, you can find that on our Vimeo page, so the Surrey Law Society Vimeo page, or just reach out to the SLS office and we can send you the links to those and to today's as well. Moving on to housekeeping, if you'd like to ask a question during the webinar, you can do so by typing that into the Q&A box. There is an option to do that anonymously too. I think Antony's going to be asking for feedback and interaction as well, so you may be asked to write some things into the chat box. If you'd like to speak directly to Antony at the end of the session, you can do so by raising your hand and we'll unmute you at that point. The webinar is being recorded, which you should have been notified of, and you will be asked to complete a survey form as you exit the webinar. So please do that. That's really helpful for us in shaping the programme for next year. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Antony. Thanks very much.
Right, okay, thank you for that, Helen. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my slides and my slide deck. And so, as Helen mentioned, we do have an awful lot to get through. I just want to say a few words really at the start. First, particularly to thank the Surrey Law Society and Helen for inviting me here and give me the opportunity to explain a little bit about legal project management and legal process improvement to you all. A really brief summary about me and perhaps why people should listen to me in this field. I'm a non-practicing solicitor. I qualified and practiced with Masons, now Vincent Masons, and I qualified and practiced quite some time ago. I have a lot of experience of project management, of applying project management within law firms and in the legal services industry. Have a lot of experience, a lot of practical experience of process improvement, and also legal automation and creating workflows, that kind of thing. And as indicated, I have a lot of legal IT experience. I spent my entire working life working within the legal service industry. So I worked with a number of law firms, I worked with LexisNexis, I worked with a number of legal software suppliers and so on. And for the last 12 years, I think, I've run my own company, which is Legal Project Management Limited, and I now train people about legal project management and legal process improvement. I suppose for me, one of the guiding aims of my training, what informs me is, I try to think, knowing what I now know, what would I like to have known when I started out? So if you imagine me as a sort of a younger solicitor, which I might take quite some doing, but you can imagine me as a younger solicitor, perhaps. What would I really have wanted to know when I was starting out about legal project management and legal process improvement? And what skills would I have benefited being pointed to and then being able to apply as my career progressed? And this is really what I'm going to try to do in this webinar, which is to give you all a pointer around some essential skills associated with legal project management and essential skills associated with legal process improvement. And I'm hoping that after the webinar, you'll then be able to begin to apply some of the skills that we're talking about, or perhaps failing that. You may then want to take the time to find out more about some of the skills, some of the tools and the techniques that we will be touching upon during the course of this webinar. So what I'd like to do is start the substantive webinar as well. Now, there is a relationship between legal project management and legal process improvement. And I've tried to set out or give an indication of that relationship in this diagram. Most of the large law firms in the UK, and certainly I think all of the top 20 or top 25 firms, which you find in the City of London, and all the larger regional law firms and so on, they will have teams of legal project managers working for them. So, you know, there is a role and there is a career path leading towards legal project manager, and in fact going beyond, maybe head of legal project management, head of legal operations, that kind of thing. So what do legal project managers do? And essentially what they do is they interface between the legal service delivery team and the client. So they work on this kind of horizontal level almost. It's a very client-facing role. And it's all about making sure that the legal team delivers the work at the appropriate time. The appropriate people are working on tasks which they should be working on, and so on, and making sure that gets delivered to the client. And also, of course, asking the client for further information or any documentation, and so on. Now, the point I want to make at the outset and stress is that I'm talking about the operational side of legal service delivery today. It's not necessarily the black letter law. Well, in fact, it isn't the black letter law. It's all the operational side of legal service delivery. You don't necessarily need to be in a firm that employs legal project managers to want to know and to be able to apply the principles of legal project management. And I'll expand upon this a little later. So anyway, this is the legal project management bit on this horizontal level, very client-facing, making sure the work gets done, delivered to clients. Now, every law firm will have a lot of processes within it. Some of those processes are obviously designed to support the creation and the delivery of legal work. And some of those processes are equally obviously designed to support, let's say, the back office processes. So, you know, your billing processes, for example. Now, one way of viewing the processes is that they support the legal service delivery, or a good many of them. So the processes, the way I envisage it, are almost a kind of a series of vertical struts. So we have the horizontal, which is the delivery of the legal work and the communications going from the legal team and the client and back again. And then you have these vertical struts, which are the processes which help legal teams develop and deliver the legal work, I should say. Help the legal teams deliver the legal work in the most effective way possible and in the most cost-effective way possible too. So there is a definite relationship between legal project management and legal process improvement. What I want to do first, I want to really focus on legal project management. And I want to highlight just a number of key skills that legal project managers and practicing solicitors need to be aware of and need to try to apply. Just before I do this, I just want to say a word about the definition of legal project management that we have there. So this definition, which is from the International Institute of Legal Project Management, you can see the logo there at the top left, the IILPM. I'm a founder member of the IILPM, and we've been delivering legal project management courses for, I'd say almost eight years now. You can see there in that definition it's really no more than applying project management principles to enhance the delivery of legal services. Legal service work is clearly a vertical sector. There are lots of vertical sectors. You can consider the construction sector, the healthcare sector, the IT sector, software development, and so on and so forth. Now, the principles and practices of project management, they can really be applied to any vertical sector. But the key to applying those principles effectively is being able to adapt them to particular sectors. And that's really all we're talking about in the context of legal project management, quote unquote. We're talking about how you get these well-known project management principles, tools, and practices, how you are able to adapt them and to apply them to legal service work. I'm sure that you're all familiar with this. So this is section D from the SRA statements of competence for solicitors. Now you can see there that as we know, the statements of competence is set out in a series of tasks. So it's a task-based competence statement that the SRA expects solicitors to be competent in, obviously. Section D particularly, really this is all about project management. Although the statement of competence itself does not actually use the phrase project management, but if you look at those tasks, that's project management. Any project manager, whether from inside or outside the legal service industry, would immediately recognize those tasks of being the kind of task that they do in their work as project managers. And things like being able to agree the scope and the objectives of work, being able to manage and to deploy resources effectively, being able to meet time scales, bearing in mind the resource requirements and the budgets, keeping people informed of progress, and so on and so forth. All this is really goes to the very core of what project management is. So then one way of looking at this is this is what the SRA is expecting solicitors to be competent in. One way of looking at this is to try and think, well, what do the very best project managers do? There's a whole history and a whole body of work about project management. And there's a lot of research to show what the very best project managers do, and so on and so forth. So if we can learn a little bit about that, what the best project managers do, regardless of the sector, and learn how to apply that to legal services, then that's surely going to help you in your work as a solicitor. And again, I'll try to give you some pointers around what the best project management practices are. So what we've done, or one of the things we've done at the ILLPM, is that we've developed this 4-phase legal project management framework. You can see there right at the start, it says quite clearly, we really are talking about the application of project management to legal services, taking into account the factors around the legal market, the regulatory aspects, commercial factors, and so on. What I would like to do in this talk particularly, just focus on the basics, which are really set up there, this kind of 4-phase approach to project management. If you reread all the books on project management, look at the internet and so on, you will often see project management is explained, albeit at high level, it's either 4 or 5 phases. We've chosen a 4-phase approach. And what we recommend to lawyers working on matters is they spend a little bit of time defining the matter, then they spend a little bit more time planning the matter, then they go into the delivery phase where the work is actually being done, That's all about reporting to clients, monitoring the work and so on. And then they move into the close phase. And from a project point of view, there are certain things we recommend that people should do, lawyers should do when they close matters. So let's just take a step back for a moment. If I were to ask a civil litigator to break down a typical litigation matter in broad phases, they probably come up with something like this. So they break it down in terms of process, pre-commencement of legal proceeding, commencement of proceedings, into matters trial, post-trial, that kind of thing. And of course, there's a lot more detail to it than that, but they may be the high-level phases they would break it down to. Now, what would a project manager do when faced with this? How would they break these things down into phases? Well, what they'd be looking for, the first thing is to define the work that's going to happen, define the work that you're going to do. And you'd want to do that quite early on during the project or during the legal matter. So the project definition phase will be quite early. And then what you would do, if you have a good project definition, you'd then be able to build that out into a project plan. I think it's a really important point to note that if you are able to define something fairly well at the outset, then you can then build that out to create a project plan. And that means that your planning is so much easier because you've already defined what it is you're going to do. I'll go through the project definition elements in a little more detail in a moment or two. Then the next phase will be the project delivery phase. And this is when, I say, most of the substantive work gets done. And then the final phase is going to be the close phase. Now, you will notice there that in the overlapping of the phases from a legal project manager's point of view, that there is in fact an overlap. We know that projects of any kind, particularly legal projects and legal matters, unfortunately, in the real world, it never happens that things go, simply from one to the other, and so on. There is going to be an overlap, and people need to deal with real-world circumstances. So, bearing that in mind, there is a constant need to keep any project plan or any matter plan that you've been able to create under constant review. The reason why, as we all know, is that it's very rare, if not it never happens, that the project or the legal matter unfolds and take place exactly as planned at the outset. Now, because things we know are going to happen during the matter, that is not an excuse not to plan. I know lots of people say to people, well, if things are going to change in any event, what's the point of planning? Because why don't we just stick with the process we got and we go through the legal process and there you go. But the very fact that you've defined the matter and you planned it, what you will have done, and it's impossible not to do this, you will have begun to think of your what-if scenarios, because you will be thinking of the risks. All this, don't forget, everything I'm talking about is from an operational point of view. So you will be thinking of the risks, and you will be thinking, well, what are we going to do if this event happens? What are we going to do if this event doesn't happen, and so on? So typically, when you are looking to define and when you're looking to plan, let's say a litigation matter, you might then want to start thinking, or you will start thinking, what are we going to do if, for example, we don't get access to all of the witnesses of fact that we need? What are we going to do if we don't get access to the relevant set of documentation that we need? How are we going to find the expert, and so on? And the fact that you do this, that then gives you an opportunity to create your kind of little what-if scenario, so that when things do go wrong, as things surely will, you will have already kind of modeled them, and you will have in place a little mini plan, as it were, to be able to keep the project rolling forward. So the fact that things are likely to change once the matter is in progress is not an excuse, I would say, not to do planning. Planning is really, really important. And when I said that learning the lessons of the very best project managers, there's a lot of research to show that regardless of the domain, whether it's legal or construction or anything else, the very best project managers spend twice as much time on planning as the rest of the project managers. So if the very best project managers spend quite a bit of time on planning, that's telling us something, isn't it? You know, we need to spend more time on planning the matter. We need to spend more time defining and planning and so on. So I want to quite quickly give you an idea of the types of things you would do in this definition phase. So the definition phase, the aim of the definition phase is to produce a project or a matter, if you like, a matter definition document. I like to use a template for a matter definition document, which before it's completed is no more than 1 page long. So you can capture what it is you need to do on 1 A4 page. Obviously, if you're typing things in, it may go over 1 A4 page, but nevertheless, you have in your head the idea of creating a matter definition document just on 1 A4 page. And what you want to do in this definition phase are collect information, write them down in this matter definition document. And the things you want to collect and write down are things like these: the client objectives, pretty obvious, really, but often it can help just to write those down. And this is true, I think, for lots of aspects of legal project management. So much of the work that lawyers do, particularly so much of the work that the more experienced lawyers do, it's often retained in their head. And that is the same from matter to matter. Now, I know everybody's busy, and I know that the thought of writing for the documentation to help you plan your matters, to help you execute the matters, may not initially sound like a good thing to do. But if you are able to write things down, then you can quickly share them with your colleagues, with your team, and everyone else who is working on the matter is quite literally working on the same page, because you've been able to define what the matter is in this matter definition document. So you set out the client objective, obviously after meeting with the client, after discussing with the client, and so on. Then I always like to have a quick summary of the legal and the commercial issues that the clients face with. Why have they come to us? What do they want us to achieve? Then I will list the key deliverables. Now, in any practice area, experienced solicitors will know what the deliverables are going to be. If I were to ask a litigator to list the most common deliverables in, let's say, a typical commercial litigation matter, they're going to give me those deliverables. I know they will. So they will refer to things such as the statements of claim, the expert report, witness statement, those kind of things. What people don't know, of course, is the exact content of those deliverables, because they will vary from case to case. So again, what I like to do and what I recommend is that people can sort of prep their matter definition document in advance, and you can list the deliverables that you expect to deliver on a matter of this type, and it's already there in your matter definition document. And then this also then becomes a checklist. And then, of course, on some matters, if you don't necessarily need to deliver the entire list of the deliverables that you've got, you just take those deliverables out. Then the next part is a summary communication plan. And this is really no more than saying for example, that we are going to create a status update report of this matter or about this matter. And we're going to send this status update report to the client and the rest of the team, perhaps once a week or once a month, or however you think, or however often you think you will need to send out that status report. The big point I want to make about this is that once you have committed yourself to an initial communication plan, and then once you've said, so we're going to create this report and we're going to send it to people every week or every month, whatever it is, you must commit to that and you must follow through with it. I know it sounds really, really obvious, but it's so easy not to do it. Because let's just say we're going to send the client a status report every month. But often you're so busy working on not just the matter concerned, but lots of other matters, you've got lots of other work to do and so on. And let's suppose that in month 3, not an awful lot's happened, according to you, from your legal perspective, maybe compared to month 2. So then it becomes quite tempting, really, to say, well, I don't particularly want to bother the client or anybody else because not an awful lot's happening. But then supposing the same happens on month 4, you think, well, nothing really significant happened or gone on. We're still waiting for something, whatever something may be. But then you've not sent the report out twice. So then the clients will then be thinking, well, where is the report? This is what I'm expecting. This is what they've said that they will do. And the other aspect of it is that once you commit to doing things, particularly from a project point of view, you have to follow through with that. If not, that will reflect poorly on you and poorly on your colleagues. So the point is, once you commit yourself to a summary communication plan, you must follow through with it. You can, of course, change your communications later on, but that's for later. Yeah, you then do an initial risk assessment, and again, I've put in brackets. This focuses on the operational issues. The reason why I put that is often people kind of confuse or conflate this idea of risk because the client is facing a number of risks, and of course lawyers will advise the clients about the risks they are facing, the commercial risks of perhaps doing an activity or not, or so on. We're really talking about the operational risk and thinking about the risks along the lines of what events may happen or may not happen that will get in the way of us from delivering what we need to deliver. It's those kind of operational risks that you need to be thinking about. And then you need to come up with initial estimates of time and hence cost. Now, nobody likes coming up with estimates at all. Not in my experience. And anyway, coming up with an estimate is probably one of the most challenging aspects of I think of being a lawyer. And we know that because clients will always want to know how long is it going to take and how much it is going to cost. There's 2 ways of approaching estimates. And I've got a book here for you that you might like to read if you want to follow up some of the things I'm talking about. I would like to say this book is not focused on law at all. It covers lots of other fields, construction. But it is a book about project management that's quite readable, which in itself is quite rare. And you will see that in the book, it does talk quite a lot about planning. It also explains this idea of reference class forecasting. And in our world, in the legal world, all this really means is if you are faced with having to estimate how long a matter is going to take and how much it is going to cost, the thing you need to do is look for a class of similar matters that you and your colleagues have worked on before. That is your reference class. You then take the average from that reference class, the average matter that's found there, and then you'll know that this is how long a typical matter of this kind is going to take, and this is how much a typical matter of this kind is going to cost. Now, obviously, the key to that is you need to have your reference class criteria is very clear, and you need to have access to data within your firm and so on. But I know that lots of software now, particularly that kind of legal software that's focused around helping with the pricing and also helping with the project delivery matters. This is how a lot of the software works in any event. It will look into your practice management system, look at previous matters, and come back and give you a range of costs and a range of pricing and so on. But then I also want to explain another approach to coming up with the estimates. But bear in mind, do consider this idea of reference class for forecasting, which is really no more than looking for a class of similar matters and taking the average of those matters. That will give you your initial cost and your initial time estimates. And now I want to move on to the planning. Now, matter planning, the fundamental aspect of planning. As I mentioned earlier, what you do in planning is you build out and build from a lot of the work that you've done during the project definition stage. And part of the building out, part of the development, is that you continue to break the work down. Now, I suppose the central aspect, the most foundational aspect around what I'm calling traditional project management, of this 4-phase approach of the defined plan delivery. And so the central aspect of planning here is this idea and this tool known as a work breakdown structure. And all the work breakdown structure is, as the name implies, is you have a look at the work that's going to be required to be done in order to complete the matter. So what you would do is you'd have a look at all the tasks that need to be done. You try to break those tasks down into a reasonable level of granularity. You try and break the task down such that you feel confident of estimating how long that task is going to take, or your colleagues feel confident of estimating how long that task is going to take. So you have the tasks and you break them down and you continue to break them down, hence the work breakdown structure. And then what you would then do, you would assign those tasks to somebody. And then you'd plug in their charge out rates. And then you'd multiply the charge out rate with the estimated amount of time that it's going to take. And then you'd start to build that up again. So this is really a bottom-up approach that helps you to estimate the time that it's going to take you to do tasks and therefore the matter. And it's going to help you therefore to come up with the costs and the cost profile of the matter. Now, a few minutes ago, I explained a little bit about reference class for forecasting, which is the kind of high-level approach. And you can consider that approach as being kind of an outside-in approach because it has nothing to do with the matter at hand. You've looked at a reference class of similar kind of matters. This work breakdown structure is kind of a bottom-up approach, and it's an inside-out approach where you're focusing just on the matter at hand. If you combine the two, the reference class forecasting and the work breakdown structure approach, you'll have a really solid approach and probably the best approach to coming up with really good estimates, both in terms of costs and in terms of how long it's going to take the work to be done. As say, this idea of a work breakdown structure and this concept of breaking things down, goes to the very heart of traditional project management. And then what people would do once they have completed this work breakdown structure, or at least something very like or something very like it, they would then go on to develop a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart, it's as you can see that it's a schedule. I'm sure many of you have come across a Gantt chart before, and again, it's something that people associate with project management. You can see that how a Gantt chart works. It's simply a case of you would set the tasks against a timeline, against a calendar timeline. And then you can do things such as you can associate someone to do the task, you can plug in their charge out rates, and so on and so forth. I personally always find a Gantt chart to be really, really useful. But then I would say that, wouldn't I, as a project manager? But I can say that in every single project in my career that I've run and that I've planned, every single time, when I've created a Gantt chart and I've seen the tasks set against the timeline, I've always thought, we've not got as much time as we think. It's just something about when you see the tasks against a calendar, and it really brings you up short. And I really do like the Gantt chart for that. And once you've done your first draft of the Gantt chart, then that also gives you an opportunity again to do further what if. So you can maybe move tasks around. You can see if some tasks can be done in parallel, and so on and so on and so forth. So we've now come on to the delivery phase. So we've got an idea of what the matter's about. We've been able to list the deliverables. We've broken the deliverables down into tasks. We've been able to create a work breakdown structure or something very like it. And we've come up with the bottom-up estimates. We've created a Gantt chart. We now go on to the delivery phase, which from a project manager point of view really involves no more than this. It's really about making sure that people are doing what they are meant to be doing according to the project plan, according to the schedule that you will have created, ideally using a Gantt chart that I just showed you a little earlier. And march to delivery, it's really around these four things here. So it's around issue management. So the issues that come up during the delivery phase. The classic approach that legal project managers have, and project managers in any kind of domain have, in order to manage these, is that we will keep an issue log. We'll note the issue. We'll note how the issue can be fixed. And most importantly, we will assign someone responsibility for fixing it. That's a really important point of project management. If something needs to be done, assign someone responsibility for doing it. And you need to be really clear about that. Then there's this idea of change management. How can we keep things within scope? This is actually really hard to do, particularly in the context of legal service work. Obviously, if there's a really big change in the matter, then I'm sure you're going to take a view. Maybe the client partner, the client, and these solicitors working on it will take a view that because there's lots of significant changes going on, we're then going to need to rescope, and we'll issue the cost profile, we'll reissue the cost profile, and that kind of thing. So really big and obvious changes. In some ways, they can be managed easier than all those small changes. You often find that the small changes, they accrue one upon another and upon another and upon another. And at the time, it seems quite easy just to do the small change. But before you know it, you've got a series of small changes that collectively together means that a lot's changed in the matter, and therefore the cost profile associated with the matter changes along so on. So the recommendation here is, if nothing else, keep a change log. Just keep one log, again, on one A4 piece of paper, or could be an Excel spreadsheet, just something as simple as that. And just keep a note of the changes, keep a note of who requested the changes, what was done, how long the change took place, and so on. Then, if nothing else, you've got something to refer to if anyone requests, if anyone queries why certain changes were made. You can quickly explain why. With schedule management, looking at the schedule, the big idea here is you need to keep track of not just the cost that has accrued in the matter as the matter's been going along, but you also need to keep track of the work that's been done. So to give a really quick example, let's suppose we were working on the matter and a particular phase was going to run, we estimated, for 6 weeks. And we think that the total cost of the phase is going to be £50,000. So let's say at week 3, You then check with people, and you look at the schedule, and you look at your time recording software, and you can see that the cost accrued so far at the end of week 3 in terms of time spent is £25,000. So the estimated cost of this overall is £50,000. Halfway through, you're £25,000. So you might think, right, we're right on schedule. But if only 10% of the work has actually been completed, you've got a real problem, because people are spending an awful lot more time than was planned and that was anticipated. So you really need to keep track of both the costs accrued and the work that's been done. And then reporting, as mentioned before, you need to report consistently, you need to report regularly. You would nearly always want to use a template, you want to refer to the issues, to the risks, you want to give a cost update, that kind of thing. So that's the matter delivery phase. Now, the matter close, when you've got to the close phase, then what happens? From a project manager's point of view, the classic approach is this, that there should always be a post-project or post-matter review where people sit down and then they discuss what worked well, what didn't work well. That gets recorded, and that gets placed on file. So after each matter, the file is building up. And then the idea is then when you go to work on a new matter, the first thing you do is look at your matter review file, and then you can look at all the lessons learned from all previous matters. Now, there's a couple of issues with this. One is that a lot of legal work, depending on your practice area, can take an awful long time. The other thing is that I think it's a common thing. We don't necessarily like to go back and revisit something that's done. And often we're just so busy, we just want to move from matter to matter, project to project, and so on. So the obvious thing to do is to try to have end of phase reviews. So if you've been able to break your matter down into phases, and perhaps if you're working alongside colleagues as part of the legal team, have that review at the end of each phase. Now, that review can be quite short. It's really just a case of understanding where you are, what's working well, what isn't working well, and so on. Then the nice thing about doing that review at the end of each phase is you can take the lessons learned to the next phase in that matter. Nevertheless, the essence of closing, there's lots of other things, of course, that lawyers need to do in terms of closing matters. But the essence from a project manager's point of view is to have this review, this project review, and try to see what lessons can be learned, so that everybody within the team can improve going forward and can improve during the next month. I just want to say a really quick word about this organisational legal project maturity. There's lots of research that's being conducted that shows that organisations, whether in legal or not, organisations which have a high degree of project maturity. In other words, they are really good at delivering projects on time, on cost, within resources, etc. They tend to be the better performing organisations in their sector. And the reason for that's quite obvious, because they are better at servicing their clients or servicing their market, and they're more efficient and they're more effective organisations. So the idea is that organisations of all kinds, including law firms, should try to develop their organisational legal project management maturity, as I'm calling it. And so the idea is to try to get to levels 3, 4, and 5. And this also helps promote a project management culture, or project-based culture, which I think is sometimes lacking in lots of law firms. And so that's a quick run through of legal project management. I want to do an even quicker run through of legal process improvement now. The essence of legal process improvement, as you can see there, it's a structured methodology for optimizing legal and business processes so that legal professionals can deliver high quality, cost-effective services in less time and with less effort. And when you see that definition there, you think, well, who would not want that? And everyone wants to do this. And so the key to doing it is you look at your processes and then you look to see how they can be improved. And I'm pretty sure that practically every law firm has processes that can be improved. So how would you go about this? I'm not going to go through each of these step by step. I think they've been broadly covered in the definition that I've just referred to. And then also, for those of you who would like, Helen will be able to send copies of these notes to you after the webinar. So, given all the benefits and all the advantages of legal process improvement, why is legal process improvement not more widely applied and not more widely followed? And there's lots of reasons why. Here's a few general ones. I think firstly, there's some lawyers, although fewer than previously, still don't quite believe that they work with processes. And so obviously, if you don't believe you work with processes, then there's no process to improve. To be fair, I think most of us now are more readily appreciate that we do in fact work with processes of all kinds. So we should be able to improve them. Now, legal process improvement by its nature, and as the name implies, should result in change. And again, implementing change and doing change, that can be quite difficult to do. Often, it's just easier to do what you already know, even though you know it's an inefficient way of doing things, but it just feels easier just to stick with this, but try and work faster and to try and get more work done, which in the short term, fine, you can see how people would use that and get them through the working day. But in the longer term, it doesn't help either individual solicitors or the firms that they are working in. LPI projects usually require time from fee earners, which is non-chargeable time. And as we know, people don't like spending too much time on non-chargeable activities. And that's another dampener on the legal process improvements. And there's a number of other reasons as well why legal process improvement is perhaps not as widely done as might hope, such as the lack of skills, the lack of knowledge, and so on. So where to make a start? Where to make a start at looking at legal process improvements? There's really two. You look at the legal service work itself, then you look at some of the supporting processes, some of the back office processes, perhaps such as your billing process and so on. And try to assess where you get the quickest return on investment. And as a suggestion, you might want to have a look at your firm's client satisfaction program. The reason why I mention that is every firm will have a client satisfaction program where they will ask clients, how they are doing and try to get feedback. But relatively few firms will get the information from the clients in a structured way, and even fewer will act upon the information that they get from the clients. And really, if you think about it, your client satisfaction program should be run as a program made up of a number of projects. So if you want to make a start, it should be run as a number of projects and a number of processes. So if you want to make a start in terms of legal process improvements, that might be one way of making a start. As I say, there is a direct connection between project management and process improvement. So how to make a start? You could look at the process and you just pick things which you know are not working well. And then you try to figure out how to make the thing that you picked upon, that you've identified that isn't working well, you implement a fix for that. It could be almost anything. It could be creating a checklist, it could be creating a new template, whatever it's going to be. And then you test that and then you implement it, which is fine. That's one way of making stuff, that kind of incremental way. The slight concern I would have about that, though, is that after a while, that becomes more like an ad hoc approach to doing things. I personally favor a more comprehensive approach. This is where you step back, you look at the process as a whole, you map that entire process in order to understand it properly. Then once you've understood the process, you would ideally create another map showing the improved process. Then you develop an implementation plan about how you're going to implement the improved process in your live environment. So the more comprehensive approach is actually the more structured approach. Now, Obviously, we can't physically see the processes in legal services. So this means that we need to look at the processes and devise better ways of working within the processes by means of using workshops. This is the classic approach now in terms of legal process improvement. A central part of the workshop, so the workshop should be made up of representatives of everybody who works in the process. So that might be a partner, might be an associate, a paralegal, as well as people from non-fee earning departments, such as your IT department, perhaps, or your IT department. But in any event, people who are working in or affected by the process should be in a legal process improvement workshop. Very, very often the core of those workshops is all about creating the maps, all about the process mapping. So how do you go about that? You really need to create, as mentioned before, two maps. So map one represents what's happening with the process now. And this is what's known as the current state map. You're really wanting to capture in map form almost a snapshot of what happens in the process. So in the map, you would list all the tasks. You would identify who does the particular task. You'd have the flow, literally, you'd have lines linking the task from one to the other. And so that's the current state. And then you would have a look at that map, and then you'd work out, how can we make this better? How can we make this flow better? How can we become more effective? And often when you look at your current state map, a lot of things you'll be asked to do just jump out at you in any event, because as soon as you see the map, what process improvement maps do is they surface what's going on. So if you think, for example, of all the approvals that may pass between an associate and a partner, and then back again and so on, and you literally see the lines going back and forth, you think, why are we doing this so many times? So you can see it. And that gives you focus for improving things. Then you would develop a new and improved process, which ideally means creating another map, which is the future state map. It can be hard to keep the distinction between the maps, because as you're creating your current state map as part of the workshopping, you will almost certainly be creating notes about how to make things better anyway. But try to keep the distinction: current state and future state. So really, how to make a start with mapping? You need to determine the scope of the process that you're working on. So you need to clearly define where the process starts and where it ends. If you don't do that, you are going to end up with a very, very long and very messy process mapping exercise. And if you don't define the area that you're going to map, basically your mapping exercise is going to be unmanageable. So you must define the start and the end of the process. Then you start at a high level of granularity. You list those tasks that you know definitely happen, and then you work down into further detail. You're basically wanting to look for actions, you're wanting to look for tasks, and you plot those along the map. It will be an iterative process. You'll be changing things as you're going along. I'd be surprised if you get everything done in just one workshop, and so it may need a couple of workshops working with the process mapping team. And I'm not going to go too much into the different kinds of maps, but just so you know, there are lots of different kinds of maps that do help. And the idea is that you would begin to draw maps at a fairly high level of granularity, then go down into further detail. That helps you and the people in the process mapping team understand the process better. I personally find swim lane charts to be the most useful kind of map. So they're the maps I most often use when working with legal teams. This is an example of a swim lane chart. There's no need to be too concerned about the detail at all here, but you can see there's a whole set of horizontal columns. Each of these columns represent a stakeholder in the process. So there may be clients, associates, paralegals, partners, that kind of thing. And you can see the map. We are mapping the flow of the work between each kind of stakeholder. And as I say, I find these kind of swim lane charts, or swim lane maps. These are my go-to maps when working with legal service teams. And this is really about the workshopping, which I mentioned before. Although I created this map using software, and I use some software called Lucidchart to create this. There's lots of software out there. The most well-known is Microsoft Visio, but there's Lucidchart and there's Myron, so there's lots of things. But you could also simply create the maps using Post-its and the wall. So assume you have everybody in the same room. You do have the map. You do be able to create the map by asking people what they do, what tasks they do, how long they take with the tasks, and you just build up the map along them. If you are unable to get people all in the same room, then you'll need to use a series of online tools. As I mentioned before, a couple of the most useful ones I found for this have been Lucidchart and Myron. It goes without saying that if you're going to use an online tool, you need to become familiar. You need to become pretty familiar with it. Now, I like to do some of my own research before the workshop. You'll find there's lots of documentation around the processes that's going to be mapped. Some are formal processes, I find that the research helps me begin to understand not just the practice area, but the process concerned. So I would encourage you to do that if you are engaged in the mapping exercise, and if you've been given a task of creating process maps, you might want to do some research around the practice area. There's another little example of a swim lane chart. Now, what I tend to do if I'm conducting a process mapping exercise, as a result of my research, I tend to do a high-level map that I create. The reason why I do this, I then present this to people or something like it in the workshop, and I'll then say, so tell me what I've missed. Tell me what I've misunderstood. And I found that I get a lot more information back from people that way than literally starting with a blank wall or blank piece of paper and saying to people, right, can you please take me through the process that you're working in? Take me through your process for selecting an expert, take me through your billing process, or whatever process you're looking at. I find that if I do my version and say, where have I gone wrong? What have I misunderstood? The other thing is, it's often easier to amend a version that you've already done. It's definitely better to generate the conversation. Plus, you will need solicitors and fee earners in your workshops. What you would need to do is make the best use of their time. So giving them something to focus on and something to criticize, and let's face it, lawyers are trained to criticize and pick up flaws and faults. They do this much better, much quicker than starting from a blank piece of paper. And then I would ask this whole series of questions around the tasks that people do in the workshops. I want to understand what they do, when they do it, why they do it. And then at the end of it, I then walk through version 1 of the map with the process team. So long as the team can broadly agree that the map is representative of what they do, then that's fine. You can stop. There's no point in going to the nth degree and trying to get 100% agreement from everybody in the workshop team that everything is exactly right, because you're never going to do that. That is not an achievable aim. And then I would then go on and then create a future state map, as I mentioned before. And often when completing a current state map, your version 1 map, your current state, and when everyone validates that, as I mentioned before, you will quickly see where the areas for improvement are, because you can literally see it on the map. So things like excessive authorization, maybe excessive client communication sometimes, duplication of data entry. These things are the classic things that people come across when you get people into a room working in the process. I'd say the nice thing about the math is you can literally see it. And then people don't need to be convinced we're not working in the most effective way. And then you would need to focus on the areas that you want to improve. It's highly unlikely with a reasonably complex process, you're going to improve the whole process in one go. So you need to look at particular parts of the process and try to improve them, in kind of step by step, as it were, break those down into sub-processes and so on. And the last and final point I would like to make about process improvement activity, and this now relates back to the league project management part. If you think about it, you should run every process improvement initiative as a project. Because when you run it as a project, that will help you scope, it will help you define what it is you're going to do. You can schedule your meetings. You can then schedule when you're going to create the chart. You can schedule the reviews of your charts and so on. You can then schedule when you're going to implement your chart in the live environment and so forth. If you are able to run your process improvement initiative as a project, again, using the define, the plan, the deliver, close, that kind of approach, your chances of being successful will be much increased. And some key things: make someone accountable for the process improvement from start to finish. In other words, a project manager. Ensure you have the support of some key stakeholders in your firm. And as I mentioned before, when you come to implement the improvements, don't try to do too much. Look at the process map, look at the improvements, then focus on particular areas. Right, okay, thank you for that. And we've just come up to the end of the hour. I appreciate I've come quite quickly through a lot of key concepts there. As I say, Helen has some notes that she'd be happy to send you if you would like. And so I'll just need to stop my share if I could for a moment. That's the end of the webinar. If anybody would like to ask questions or would like to follow up further, please do feel free to get in touch with me, either via Helen or directly, and I can be contacted via email, as you saw on screen a little earlier. That's Antony@legalprojectmanagement.co.uk. So now I'd like to hand back over to Helen, if I could.
Thank you so much, Antony. That was really, really helpful. And I know that you're going to follow up for us for an article for our Surrey Lawyer magazine next year as well. So if anyone wants to reach out to Antony, as he said, via his email, but you can also contact us. We will be sharing the recording of today with you, also uploading it to our Vimeo channel. And I think we'll be sharing slides as well, Antony, if that's okay with you. So hopefully everyone will have some good feedback for this session. So thank you, everyone. I think it's the last time we'll see you before Christmas. So wishing you all a wonderful festive period, and thank you again, Antony.
That's fine. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks all. Bye-bye.